Last week we did the box rotation exercise where you take one box, you draw an arrow to show in which direction the box is rotating, and then you draw the box from the new rotation. Now the goal of this exercise was to get better at thinking in 3 dimensions and actually be able to show it on paper, which will help you with drawing objects. Because of course every object exists in 3-dimensional space, and to be able to draw those objects you first need to be able to establish how that object exists, and the way to do that is by thinking in terms of boxes. I also noticed that there were more people that participated during this exercise compared to the previous ones, which involved drawing full-on objects. So I'm thinking maybe we need to stick to the basic forms just a little bit longer and slowly transition from those forms to drawing actual objects. So what I want to do this week is just keep it a little bit simple, and we're going to transition from doing these basic box shapes to drawing an actual object. And instead of just telling you to draw whatever object you want, we're going to draw this specific couch. My reasoning for that is that this is a very boxy couch, so you can very easily simplify it to a box. And on top of that, if everybody is drawing the same object, it's a lot easier to compare your drawings to everybody else's and see what you did wrong. Now, the first thing we need to do is draw the overall box, because that box is going to define how this object exists in 3D space, and that's something that I went over in a previous homework exercise. And I guess technically the one from last week also kind of covered this as well. But once we've drawn this box, it defines how this object exists in 3D space. In this case, we're seeing the box kind of from above, meaning that we're seeing the couch from above as well. So our horizon line is going to be somewhere up here. The rotation of this box also determines how the couch exists in 3D space, because for example, if we draw another box and we have this side plane directly facing us, the front plane is going to be a lot smaller because it's rotated away from us. But in this case, I want to draw it at this rotation. This box also determines the proportions of the couch. With the way I've drawn this, I think this should be good enough to draw the actual couch. But if, for example, you did something like this, you can see that the front plane is probably not big enough compared to the side plane. If we were to look at the actual couch, this front plane is way bigger than the side plane. So a box like this will make you end up with an incorrectly proportioned box. So keep that in mind as well. I'm going to say that this is about half the height of the actual couch. So in our box, we can place that at the halfway point, which is right around here. You can find the halfway point by using this cross technique as well, but you can also eyeball it. Once we have this, we also need to divide it into the armrests and the cushion parts. So the way we would do that is, I think, just kind of eyeball 1, 2 for the armrests, and then we split this into thirds. Draw this down. We can draw all of these down. I think this one is a bit too long, so place it there. The armrest extends about halfway up this line, so that would be somewhere around here, I would imagine. So we just transfer that across, meaning the other armrest is going to be over there. Next, we have to think about the depth of the couch, and we have the backrest, which is, of course, on this line somewhere. But you can also see that there's an angled section to this back part, which is what the cushions rest on. In this image, we can't really see how far these extend, so we kind of just have to make a guess, and I think it would be right around here. I think that would look right. Also, remember in the homework from 2 weeks ago, I talked about how we have to connect every line back to the outline because that tells us exactly where something exists in 3D space, which is why I'm extending all of these lines to the outlines. Like in the actual image, these of course don't extend up, but we have to do that so that we know exactly where this is in our box. And I'm just going to draw the armrest on the other side as well. And again, make sure that you draw through all of your forms, because that's also what defines how these boxes exist in 3D space. For the backrest, it exists somewhere on this line, and I'm gonna say it's right around here, and then we have that angled section right there. So we transfer that to the other side, and we end up with the angled line looking like that. And now it's actually starting to get a little bit confusing, so I'm just going to define where those cushions were. They're on this line, which is extending this way. I'm gonna extend, fuck. And now it's actually starting to get a little bit confusing, so I'm just gonna define where these cushions were. They're on this line somewhere, so we just extend this back in space. That touches there, so we extend this way. That touches there. This one touches it there. And then the last one touches it there. And then lastly, I just need to mark where the cushions are. So we have the backrest part, which is here. The cushions in the back are going to be over there. And then the actual seat cushions are going to be right below that. So those should be on this line. And then now I can clean this up really quickly. So we have armrest here in the front. This extends back this way. Then we have one cushion over here. Extends back this way. We need to give it some volume as well. Then the second one is going to be over here. And then the last one is going to be here. Then we have the cushions in the back, which are like that. We have the back support. And then lastly, we have the armrest over here. Now, the issue I can see is that this bottom part is not big enough. And that's most likely because my initial box was not tall enough. I think this should have been just slightly taller. Then we end up with something like this, which looks a bit better. I also need to make sure that these lines actually converge properly, because some of these are not going the right way. Like this one, for example, is going that way, when this one is going this way, which is mostly a line control issue. So I need to work a bit on line control as well. But that's going to be this week's homework exercise. Draw this couch from a bunch of different angles. Make sure that you actually draw the guidelines. Start with the overall box, which defines the perspective, and then draw inside of that box to give you the rest of the guidelines. Make sure that you anchor all of your guidelines to the outside of the box, and then once you have everything in place, you can draw the actual couch. Once you're done, analyze the drawing, think about what the mistakes are, and think about how those mistakes happened in the first place. Usually, the mistakes lie in the guidelines, so you have to look at the guidelines and analyze those closely. But if you want to directly participate, you can join our Discord server, which is linked in the description, and it also has all of the older homework exercises as well if you want to do those. There's also a playlist on YouTube containing all of the homework videos, so you can check these out if you want, and then I guess I'll catch you all in the next video.